We begin with our big story. A showdown for the speakership is underway after a chaotic week on Capitol Hill. House Republicans plan to kick off the voting process in a forum to succeed Kevin McCarthy to find out who his successor will be. In a historic vote this week, 8 Republicans joined Democrats to oust McCarthy, including our next guest, Republican Congressman from Montana, Matt Rosendale. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Several other members of your Republican conference are upset that you made this move. What have you heard from them, and are you worried that they are going to punish you?
Oh, no. I always let my convictions drive my decisions when it comes to my work here in Congress. I figure that the politics will always work themselves out. I've been that way. I served in the Montana legislature. I'm a firm believer. You allow your convictions to guide your decisions, and that is the best way to be. Tensions are always elevated during these times. Tempers get very hot. People say things during those times that most folks are really regret later on about it. I don't take anything personal. I don't have any personal animosity towards anyone. I truly don't. I keep everything focused on the policies, and that's what I've done previously, and will do so going forward.
Now, many of your colleagues want to do away with this one-vote threshold for the motion to vacate to get rid of a House Speaker. What would it take for you to support that scenario?
It just doesn't make sense to me. We had that in place for 200 years, and it's only the ability to make the motion. It doesn't mean that it's going to be carried out. Any motion that gets made on the floor, you still need a majority of the body to pass that motion. And there's a lot of privileged motions that can cause all kinds of difficulty in the operations of the floor that people are able to make. And I just don't think that it's good to go in and start removing these institutions or weakening these institutions that have been in place for, in some cases, 2 centuries. And honestly, is exactly what we fought to restore back in January when we went through the original speaker's race. It wasn't just about who was going to be speaker. It was about restoring a lot of those very rules that had been governing Congress for a long time, that had been eliminated over the last 15 to 18 years, and allowed the power to be consolidated into the hands of the Speaker and the Rules Committee, regardless of which party they were with. And that's wrong. Each member of Congress needs to be able to represent their district, their constituents equally. And honestly, by putting those rules in place, restoring those rules, making sure we have 72 hours to review legislation, making sure that all bills that come to the floor are single subject legislation without having a bunch of different things piled in there, giving the members the ability to discuss and debate and amend that legislation. That is how a functioning body, a healthy functioning legislative body is supposed to work.
I want to push back on that. Some conservatives, though, are criticizing you for this idea and these comments you reportedly made praying for a small GOP House majority, this idea that there's more sway and a louder voice when your margins are so tight. What is your response to this criticism? The fact that so much time could be spent arguing over rules that nothing actually gets done. We do have a shutdown looming again now within just a matter of weeks, Congressman.
Yeah, and I think that they shouldn't be arguing about the rules. As they say in the courtroom, questions been asked and answered. We litigated those back in January. Everybody supported the rules package overwhelmingly. Many of them have stood on the steps of the Capitol with Kevin McCarthy, including me, at press conferences, and actually bragged about this incredible rules package that we were able to pass back in January to restore regular order to Congress. So I personally believe that right now we should be focusing all of our efforts, 100% of our efforts, on completing the 8 remaining appropriation bills so that we can fund government in a transparent and responsible fashion. Even though it's 8 bills out of the 12, it only has control over about $400 billion out of the $7 trillion that the federal government will spend this fiscal year to fund all of the functions of government. So we should be able to get those knocked out in like a 2-week time period, giving us the ability to get those bills over to the Senate and then give them ample time to review them, amend them, discuss them, debate them, the same as we did, so that we can come to some kind of a concurrence on how to fund government and at what levels going forward.
But before that happens, we have this candidate forum next week to deal with the speakership. Former President Trump is expected to attend. What is the former president's role in this? And what do you make of our ABC reporting that he was behind the scenes during Kevin McCarthy's speakership battle?
There's several people, and this often happens, has raised the opportunity for the president to serve as the speaker. And while I tell you, I think that he can negotiate a better deal than anyone who has served as the speaker for quite some time, I think that his highest and best use is going to be back in the Oval Office in 2024.
Congressman Matt Rosendale, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Let's bring the big story to our panel. Joining us today, ABC News contributor Mike Muse, ABC News political contributor and former Republican Congresswoman from Virginia, Barbara Comstock, ABC News political contributor and former Democratic Senator from North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp, and ABC News deputy political director, Avery Harper. Heidi, I will start with you. What's your take on the congressman's comment about this idea that one member can call the motion to vacate, that there shouldn't be any change to the rules, that we could be in this position all over again if they don't like who the speaker is who's chosen?
Well, man, he's just asking for more trouble. And you have a system that has now produced chaos. You have a rule that is unmanageable, especially in a tight majority, and he wants to re-up it. Somebody who can't learn from the past problems. If he thinks that what was going on this week in the House of Representatives is good for a Republican majority going into the future, he doesn't have the same political calculus that I do.
Barbara, I mean, moderates in theory could potentially unite the House in this speakership chaos. But as we heard from the congressman, such a small majority is really dominating this conversation. Is there a path where the moderates could sort of take more control here?
Well, I certainly hope they will. And I hope they will, in the same way, perhaps say, listen, you're not going to get our votes until you start being governing people and working on things. I mean, it's ironic that Congressman Rosendale is talking about all these things that he wants to do, cutting budgets and doing all these things, yet he's a big fan of Donald Trump, who added $8 trillion to the deficit. So, these guys, they say one thing and then they turn around and they want, think Donald Trump cut such great deals. Donald Trump was the person who was always, he never cared about any specifics. He didn't pay any attention to any of the details. He was signing off on things and just letting things run up like that. And the congressman ran, he's really talking about running for Senate, which was why he was doing all this performance. And he was fondly called Maryland Matt, and he was soundly defeated when he ran against John Tester again. So if he goes over there to the Senate, the House probably be glad to get rid of him and he'll lose his Senate race again.
And Avery, what do you make of the congressman's comments there that Trump could do a better job than any other House Speaker, that he's welcoming Trump's involvement in this process?
Right. I think the congressman is the perfect illustration of the deep divisions that there are within this Republican Party and this House conference. The fact is that former President Trump is arguably a large part of the dysfunction that we're seeing in the Republican conference right now. And so to see that he might have his finger on who is going to be the next Speaker of the House, you have to remember that he also gave Kevin McCarthy his blessing, and that took 15 votes. So we're going to have to wait and see exactly what happens next week. But there are a lot of divisions in this party, and so it remains to be seen whether there's going to be something that is a smooth transition from one speaker to the next.
It's hardly a smooth transition as far as we can tell now. So, Mike, give us a big picture view here. We're still no closer to any deal to avert a government shutdown. Congressman said they want to get that done, but how is the plan? How is this going to play out? But ultimately, how are Americans going to view this? When they're looking at this kind of chaos and the fact that no legislating is happening, the House is at a complete standstill.
Liz, that's a really great question. I don't think Americans had been paying attention that closely to the deep divisions that is in the House of Representatives and how that division has been complicated for passing any legislation going forward. But I do believe now that the Americans are paying attention because, one, we're going to see that it is going to take a while for the Republicans to find a consensus candidate who will be able to become Speaker of the House. As a result, that would make it more complicated for the government to negotiate a budget for that so that the government can keep running. The idea that the representative that you're just speaking with was discussing individual bills, that seems like a very tall task in order because of the deep divisions that exist. In order for that to pass, Americans will feel that once the government shuts down, then they will be wide awake.
Great stuff, Mike Muse, Barbara Comstock, Heidi Heitkamp, Avery Harper. Guys, stick around.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.